Matt Thompson, who's a former deputy web editor at the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, he recently wrote on the Nieman Labs website, which is Nieman Labs often is one of the best websites to go to about new media. He said, it's a bit of a long quote, so bear with me. For years, our assumption has been that the web was going to require more and more news, that the way to succeed online was to generate ever more frequent updates and shovel up ever more numerous headlines, to completely saturate our users with information so they'll keep clicking. Needless to say, this is a resource-intensive endeavor, and with all signs pointing to fewer resources for employing professional journalists, it looks like a losing one. So do any of you agree with him, disagree with him intensely?
I agree on certain points. I mean, I do think in the internet age, to be successful online, you really do have to have something original. I don't think, I mean, this business model that print media had where they would just sort of syndicate content from, Associated Press and Reuters or some New York Times or whatever, that works in print to a certain extent. But online, not so much. I think people do, for the most part, crave sort of originality. And I think that's, just speaking as a publisher of blogTO, I think that's why people come to our site, because more often than not, they'll find stories on blogTO that they can't or they haven't read elsewhere. So for us, it really is a matter of generating content. But to the point about this being a very resource-intensive issue, I think that's where, to Chris's point earlier, that's where crowdsourcing and the community play a big role. I don't think you can go as far as some sites have where the entire content is crowdsourced, because at the end of the day, especially if you're sort of a news-focused site, you likely have some sort of editorial mandate. There's certain stories that you want to cover. And the community is just not going to always step up and sort of fill in and create that kind of stuff. And there's also a quality issue. Just speaking again based on experiences with blogTO, we get some amazing stuff submitted by our community, like amazing photos, amazing some amazing writing from very talented individuals. Often our most popular posts are those contributed by the community. But we also get a lot of crap, and I don't mean this to sort of like belittle the contributions, but at the end of the day, like, not everyone can take a good photograph or write coherently. So there's a huge filter that needs to be applied to the crowdsourcing model. So in my mind, it is very much a content creation game, but it's a hybrid between creating your own and tapping into the best that the community has to offer.
In some ways, it's an interesting challenge, right? Because while there's fewer journalists than there have been in recent history, there's more voices, there's more stories being told. And in some ways, like the traditional business model, the cost of putting out papers or putting stories on TV is expensive. But if you can go online, the cost of delivery is significantly cheaper, right? You're basically limiting your cost of delivery. So even though the cost that you put into producing it can still be high, I think there's obviously still a significant advantage to the online delivery.
Well, just speaking on that, what do you think that online gives media consumers and news consumers that no other platform has so far, whether we're looking at print or broadcast? And I know some people might immediately think immediacy, that online you can know about a story right away, as opposed to a TV broadcast we have to wait till 6 p.m. A newspaper you have to wait till 7 a.m.
anymore.
Oh no, 5:30 sometimes. But I guess what's one of the challenges that online faces in being that immediate outlet? It's great in that respect, but what are the negative sides of being first, if there are negative sides?
I guess I can speak to the strength of traditional media in terms of why it's not a bad idea to wait for the 6 o'clock news, or wait just a little bit longer to get the TV story or the news story that some professional has worked on, put together, in terms of double-checking sources. And you're going to get a story that is backed by an entire company. There's a good chance that it's going to be true. So I think the danger in getting into the online world too much, obviously, is the exposure to stories that maybe not be untrue, but not altogether true.
Okay, that's like, sorry, no disrespect, but I mean, when quote unquote blogs emerged like 5 years ago, this was like the big thing that traditional media said, oh, you can't trust the blogs, you can't trust the web, it's, they don't have fact checkers, they don't, whatever. And we know from history that traditional media, isn't, doesn't escape the sort of same criticism either. There's been plenty of examples where...
check more than one source.
True. I guess to answer your question, I'm not so sure about TV, because in TV, in my experience, when I watch the news, it's, you're contained to a very restrictive sort of time and I guess format for the news. So there's not really a whole lot of opportunity that I've seen to really get in depth, unless it's like a 60 Minutes type sort of news program, which are great. And that's the kind of investigative journalism I think TV really shines. But beyond that, I think it's really newspapers that as our media landscape changes, that I would be very sad to sort of see the kind of investigative journalism type stories that they produce fall by the wayside, because as a web publisher, be first to admit, it's, when you're creating strictly for the web and you're dealing with limited resources and budgets, it's very difficult to create those kind of pieces, and those are what are, of course, still needed to be produced to sort of have that quality of journalism. It's not to say that the web stuff isn't quality, it's just different sort of types of stories that are pursued.
I think, David, your original question was about what are the strengths of working online. And I think if we're talking about television compared with online or print or whatever, I think one of the virtues of online really is that it really gives audiences control over what they're consuming. Obviously, if you're watching television, it's very much a linear medium, so you will be watching the program in the order that the editor has determined it should be watched. Whether that's a half-hour news bulletin or whether it's a 24-hour news channel. One of the differences, obviously, with online is that users can go wherever they want. The online being more of a journey than a destination. So you can go from point to point to point and basically make your own decisions about what it is you're going to be consuming.